Yes, welcome also from my side. We normally have a session at that time of the seminar where we inform a bit about how the program is developing. And this time I would like to focus on the midterm evaluation. I would like to take you through the scope of the midterm evaluation, where we stand in terms of timing, methodology, and main preliminary messages. This should be kept in mind as we have received, and the monitoring committee has received the draft final report just a week ago, and there was a first discussion in the monitoring committee. There was also the request, after we had a look into the paper, to deepen certain aspects. We are also working still on the recommendations which come out of this evaluation, so that you are aware that this is a work in progress, but nevertheless we would like to take the opportunity to share with you some of the messages which came out so far. Scope of the midterm evaluation: this is about the performance of the program to date. We are now in the mid of the implementation of the program. We would like to draw some recommendations for now, for the second part of the program, but as well also on the future program. I can also tell you that in that context that the monitoring committee was setting up a joint working group who explores now the possibilities for orientation for a future program, as ESPON is part of the ETC regulation, European Territorial Cooperation Regulation, under the Component 5, for those who have had a look into the proposed regulation of the Commission. And then we would also like to understand a bit the changes, how it took off in the changes we introduced after the 2013 program into the 2020 program. So the topics are to examine the objective, output, and results, the quality, the policy relevance, but also the architecture of the program, the involvement of the monitoring committee, appropriateness of administrative architecture and procedures, the allocation of resources. And for us, from the management side, it's also important to have a review of the indicators which came with the program. Now, in my presentation, I would rather, I decided to keep these more technical parts about EGTC-MA relations out and focus regarding the administrative architecture and procedures on that parts which are more related to the involvement, the tendering of projects, and these kind of aspects where most of you are concerned with. So timing, we had online surveys, and I suppose that most of you received questionnaires over the summer. In addition, we had in-depth interviews with the stakeholders. We had case studies on 4 projects, and also uptake stories to understand more in depth how actually we come from the evidence to the use of the ESPON results. And there was also consultation with the managers of ESIF, European Structural and Investment Fund managers, because there is also a particular focus in that programming period to understand the uptake, how this material can be used for the programming. And there will be also an emphasis now in the next year to inform operational programs, managing authorities to use the material for the programming of the next programming period. So timing, it was launched in March 2018, last year. We had an interim report discussed in June at the MC, and a draft final report, as I said, now just last week, which was discussed then in the last, on Monday, Tuesday in the monitoring committee, and we are discussing then the results and possible recommendations at the next monitoring committee in March 2019. So, some of the messages, the issues which have been addressed was the quality of research, and it was concluded that in principle ESPON provides a clear European added value in the following ways, that the territorial evidence which is produced is in complementarity with national and regional research activities, and it has also a kind of uniqueness in the territorial knowledge which is developed and not offered by other research organizations. And in principle, in general, project outputs are considered to be of a high scientific quality with relevant results, also delivered on time. And one of the questions which was also important for us to understand better was the question of the use of service contracts instead of subsidy contracts, because that was expected to bring some efficiency, particularly regarding the reporting, to reduce the burden. And here we could see that the service contracts had helped to broaden the supply also of service providers, that others who were not in the position to participate are now also competing to provide services to the ESPON. Regarding the terms of reference, they are considered to be well focused, but that was a message which we received, is that sometimes the deliveries are not fully realistic, the expected deliveries. I think in particular for those projects which run only 1 year, where a number of reports are expected to be present. And then another issue which was raised was then that there are greater constraints on academic creativity because the terms of reference are in a more more narrow way defining the deliveries which are expected. But there it's also then a way to discuss how this can be actually kept by leaving more space for methodologies to be applied. Then the policy relevance, the observation here is that ESPON is perceived generally to be policy relevant and to add to the knowledge of the policymakers. And that the process for selecting project topics reflects the stakeholder demand for territorial evidence. I mean, here we see a lot of positive feedback on the targeted analysis, and this is highly appreciated. We still have challenges what concerns the geographical scale of the analysis. Of course, when we start from EU-level data observation, then to break it down to regional and local is a challenge. The possibility of differentiated policy, of different policy levels to absorb the material. I think yesterday the discussion showed that quite openly, that on the one side we have rather complex material, which is interesting, which is also inspiring in a way, but to then draw out the policy messages in a way that it's also understood on the regional and local level is not so easy. And this will come up. I mean, we will see later that the uptake, especially on the regional and local level, is lower in comparison to the national and European level. So, and it's also fair to say that the preparedness of potential users to engage with the material is not always there. And there we can also have to discuss how we can actually improve this process. Public authorities may need to support, may need support to better engage with the ESPON 2020 products. I mean, whether there are ways to break it down to certain types of territories or specific issues, that is to be discussed. And I was mentioning it already regarding the target groups of the program. We can see that EU and national authorities claim to use the ESPON material more frequently than regional and local authorities. And there might be a necessity to target outreach activities in order to ensure better buy-in, as our evaluators called it, of potential key users. What that means in practice, we have to discuss also with the MC and also with the ECPs. Results and tools and outputs could be further differentiated and tailored to cover more aspects of policy development and impacts that are relevant to the needs of the target groups. And hence stakeholder involvement in the design of ESPON projects may also help to adapt to the target group's needs or the outputs. And we have still to look further on the outreach activities to help public authorities at the local and regional level in particular to better engage with ESPON outputs. As I said before, I mean, the ambition was in the program to come to the regional level and local level as well, and apparently here we have quite a shortcoming. Also regarding the management authorities of other programs, the involvement, the uptake on that side is not at that level as we have expected it, or we were hoping that it would be the case. Then, I mean, target groups outreach is very strongly connected. Outreach has clearly improved to this program period in comparison to the last program period. That shows that most responses in general are fine with the material that was produced and the way of outreach activities, how it's conducted. However, there are also responses which are a bit less positive regarding the outreach material, that they feel that the quality of the research is not actually reaching then the outreach material. We have to further understand what that means. The tailoring of outreach to the needs of the stakeholders is not always sufficient. I mean, it looks like we need to have another debate how we can actually come from evidence, like inspiring people, as we say, but to the use. And we have now, maybe just to share that with you, we have now also a discussion in the monitoring committee how this can be better linked. We have a discussion about what actually means knowledge. Do we have to turn our focus a bit, saying, okay, evidence is more information, and knowledge is also the way to understand how you can apply the evidence. So that this is, knowledge also includes skills has to do with capacities and so on. And this is, I think, an important debate what we have to also to lead, and where we may also come back to you to get a feedback on this. For successful uptake of results, it seems to be crucial to use to build on existing networks and associations across Europe to work with outreach activities. So they seem to also be important to have some experience and to get into the mode, and we can see that associations can help here. Also, alternative outreach solutions such as policy labs, combining then evidence with learning. This is another way how we may take another step in that direction in the future. So this is a kind of overview on what has been addressed. I mean, as I said, we still are in the way of understanding all the results and having some particular questions. In any case, the monitoring committee will receive the final report before the March meeting, and this will then also be online, and so you can have a look yourself. And I'm sure that then when we meet the next time in Romania in June, that we will have another discussion on that. Thank you.
Excellent.